for illumined life to be birthed into form. I am the truth. I am the light. Illumined, beloved divine.
So hello there everyone, and welcome to another video with me here today. And today will be a little different. It will be a little shorter video with this vision that I recently had, and it's about the honoring of true principles of what the divine feminine and divine masculines are from the higher perspective. So I don't usually actually have visions. I'm more of a knower. I just know things. So this was a nice welcome surprise for me. And I was lying down in my bed just recently and listening to some shamanic entranced wild ecstatic dance music. And I just fell into this vision of a movie playing out, and I just followed through the steps. And the movie was like coming through different sequences. And each time I closed my eyes again, the movie or the sequences continued. So I want to share a story, and then I'll later interpret some of what I received through spirit about this vision of an honoring of the beloved, because the true path of creation story, like what does it mean to be a royal or an illumined version of that true love and that beloved, and how these counterparts are chosen and made from a higher vantage point. Okay, so I'll just start sharing the story with all of you, and then we're going to go a little into the deeper insights, the terminology, the archetypal wisdom, and integrative approach here on earth. What does this mean for us at this time? Okay, so the vision actually began as, it was like me, I was the queen, the embodiment of the queen, and it was this high royal regal feminine aspect, and it was almost like I saw myself as that queen walking, right? And as I was walking, it looked like, you know, when you have these like boot camps or something, you know, like it was very interesting. And in front of me, there was like a rows of different masculines sitting down, you know, in a lotus position. And they were sitting there, and there was like this call, and there was this question asked, and the question was, who is now willing to serve the queen? And when I say the words the queen, it's not archetypal in terms of rulership, but it's that ultimate feminine, you know, is that royal regal feminine, which is the Christ feminine principle, which is the birthing nature of the empress. So it is what Aurea also is, as the giver of life. So I was actually shown through this vision that the beloved, it's not just a naturally self-obvious organic pathway, but it also has to be chosen. So when that calling went out, and there was this question, well, then who will serve the queen? Who's brave enough, right? Who's loyal enough to serve the queen? You know, it's almost like, if you can imagine there being different lifetimes or lifelines, and there would be different missions ascribed to these servants of the queen, but they don't serve her. They serve together with her, and they serve creation, or they serve God, right? And so through that question, there was only one person, one man, who stood up, and he said, well, I vow, you know, he was like, I will serve the queen. And he was very brave in his statement. He was like, you know, courageous. And then the queen, as myself in that vision, looks at him, and she says, look, only one brave enough to stand up, right? To stand up and be honoring of this path, and, you know, willing to choose it. But then at the same moment, she looks to the first row at someone else. That one who volunteered was at the back. And she said, that's really honorable, but I will not choose this one, because they're too boastful and too prideful in terms of, you know, they're having so much self-confidence in terms of, yeah, you know, I'm just going to serve the queen. But then she said, I will choose this one in the first row. And she looks at someone with this bright blue eyes. And there was this man who had a deep yearning to serve the queen, but he was held back. He was taken back. It's almost like withholding, because there was a question in his mind of doubt. And this doubt was, yeah, but what if I, in my service in this pursuit, but what if I fail her? What if I fail the queen? And what if I fail the divine plan, right? And she said, the reason why I'm choosing this one, because she could read his essence. She could tune into his energy and all his thoughts, because she was like aligned. She merged herself as that feminine part that is creation, that's life. She can merge or fuse her consciousness with all these conduits. We're vessels, right? We're all vessels in these beautiful bodies. And so she looks at that one. She says, well, I choose you. And the man stood up. And then they gave this vow to each other. And then I saw them, like, she took the man towards a horizon. And in this next sequence, she showed him this horizon. And she said, look, we're doing it for this light coming from the horizon, this bright new dawn. And she was showing the man this horizon. And in that moment, I saw myself as the queen from his perspective, and he kind of looked at me in awe. And in that moment, he saw this, or he felt this adoration for the queen, because she was so vehement and so self-sacrificial, and her devotion to the plan was so almighty. She was so committed. She was so devoted. And in that falling in love, his devotion also went to her. And he instantly had that feeling of, I belong to her in a way. It was like falling in love in a way. So in that moment, I saw them kissing, right? So they exchanged this vow with the kiss. And in that moment, he was like hooked. And so the next sequence showed the queen in this beautiful clothing moving up the stairs in her royal, it was like a temple, right? And again, this is all symbology as well, right? It's symbolic. And so she was taken to the temple, and sorry, there's these things here, and the guidance, or there were people, the orchestration, they were following up with the man just behind her, just like following her into the chambers. And then in those chambers, they had a sacred union, which is Heroes Gamos. It's when their love for the common devotion of serving the divine plan was brought forth, liquefied, right, put into the sacred love-making process as they were fusing their essences alchemically, blending together to become one. But it was almost like I saw the next sequence was like the next morning, and there was like an arising, and it's like there was an entrance outside once again. And then the queen looks outside. She looks at this bright new morning rising up, and she also sees the man. And in that moment, he knew it. He's like, uh-oh, he had like this, oh no. And there was this instant recognition in reading each other's energy that in that moment and in this lovemaking process, he became weak in a way, because he kind of succumbed to her essence. Like, what the feminine is so powerful and so strong, right? It can engulf you if you're not strong enough, if you're really not a loyal warrior who knows what the true feminine is. It's a birthing portal in a way. And so in a way, if you're not careful, right, you can lose your sovereignty. And in that moment, it's like that masculine became aware that he's in love with her, but it is also, in a way, it became like an addiction. It became like this obsession. And all of that, as we already know, leading to a downfall of the way the feminine and masculine energies interact and commingle with each other, because there is a loss of this original understanding of their interplay. It should be an interdependent relationship, not a codependent. So in that instant, the masculine is aware, oh no, I'm codependent now upon, I'm needing her to be myself, or to fuse myself with my own essence, which in turn makes or creates a fallen masculine, right? So then in the next segment, the queen knew that she has to send him away, because he also was in the moment aware, right? Because the mission was to fall into love with her, not falling in love with her, like seeing her as the it. But she was only truly like what the true regal feminine at her highest principle of queendom is, the self-devoted. It's like no longer the self, but it's the surrender to a greater feminine process of creation, and that life is being birthed through her, and that in each moment she has to have free. So in that moment, there was this addiction formed and codependency, which no longer created the masculine to understand and honor her in all of her freedom, because the feminine energy has to have the freedom to create. And the masculine also needs to be interdependently merged with her. And what's now the extreme opposite, as we know, is the masculine runner, who, out of the fear of that and fear of falling into love with her, because there was an original mistake made, right? Falling in love with her. Like, she's the source. She is the source in her own way, but there has to be a freedom in honoring and having the connection with that source through her. So in that moment, there was an instant recognition that the masculine received this faulty template, right? And that he will have to have training in order to grow into what true falling into love with is, right? Being in love within the space of love itself. The love that cultivates life, that two true beloveds are here to give life. Okay, so the next segment, he was sent away. So he was sent away to go on. I know there were kind of these words like, go on your pilgrimage and return to me when you can, and return to me back as your true self. So in the last segment, or the sequence, I actually saw, like, there was lots of waiting, there was like lots of waiting, and then all of a sudden there was a segment of the masculine returning, but he actually returned from the point of that horizon where the dawn was being looked into, what she showed him in the beginning. And there was this insight, it's like the masculine returns as that dawn, as that light, the shining light of the sun. Sometimes we know that principle as Ra principle is the true awakened masculine, the royal king. And the words came, almost like from the movie Lord of the Rings, the return of the king. And the same words also came simultaneously, that all queens, which are the true creation-born feminine principle of life, are self-born, they're self-created. But the masculine as the king is born through the queen. So as you know, in our modern distorted spirituality and the New Age, we're shown, and even in religion, of course, dating far back, we're shown this distorted principle how, a woman was actually created from the rib of a masculine, which is total false. That's a totally different story of geneticism and encoding and, playing with human DNA. It has nothing to do with the story of what we call the true, union principles of masculine and feminine, which was, just kind of sold to us as the story, but it was a completely other story, right, of creation. So in that way, the masculine then, sorry, it's really uncomfortable where I'm sitting. The masculine was then returning at his true self, and then he was being able to, he was welcomed again. And all I could sense was like, now they can have a true Heroes Gamos. It's a union that's lasting, because the masculine returned through that dawn as that sun, that light that shines for the feminine, not for her individually, but for the feminine principle that needs the masculine, okay, to stand in this complete honoring and togetherness, right, which is sometimes in our human level still so not understood. But I always had this knowledge because I come from a level, my highest aspect is Elohim, and I share a beautiful coupling union with my Elohim counterpart as Aurea and Aureon. And he just recently came through, and he came through someone I know as a family, and his words were, but Aurea is my crown jewel, which means, the way Aureon loves, I can't explain this, but this love is so deep. And it's a complete honoring of everything that the feminine is. And he's just there with her, within love with her. Not like, obsessed, addicted, codependent. That higher love has nothing to do with that. But as you know, on earth, we are still misinterpreting what that royal angelic love is, and how we also can get that and have that and experience that as these earthly vessels as well. As our earth counterparts, we can just clear understanding and clearer templates of these old rigid ways and doctrines that have been superimposed upon us that are false, that are very rigid, and they create this codependency and bondage instead of true bond. And in that true bond, two beings who are true love beloveds, who are illumined counterparts, they can only stand in such a position and serve God or creation with each other when they're both liberated and free. So the masculine was imprinted with the feminine seed of life, of creation, but then he had to develop the same honoring of life in himself, because the feminine principle is the principle of life and life-giving. So when the masculine gets that, he understands, I'm not to own a feminine, she does not belong to me. But when I'm with her her honoring her devotion to me will be the ultimate, only if I don't want it and need to possess it and to have it and to claim it. It will be, everything will be mine, because in the second part, in that second cycle or circle, when they had their Hieros Gamos again, it was complete, because the masculine return has his full true self. And we can also see that allegory, right, presented to us, yes, as an archetype, as something of a messaging system, because we are like, yeah, but I know this already. This is not about knowing. This is about those lucky few who will actually get to experience this kind of union, because first and foremost, the feminine has to know who he truly is. If she is the Christ feminine, the feminine needs to be patient and willing to wait for that masculine, the one who can return as his full self, his liberated self, his loyal self. Because even though he journeyed on his own, it's like he always held her seed within himself. But also, in a way, I felt this story, not just like this archetypal story, but I also felt that a specific reality. There's a matriarchal respect for the givers of life, and those who are givers of life, these higher royal angelic aspects, right? They serve as vessels to create the masculines that, as you know, in many planetary stations of life, throughout eons of time in creation, the masculine energy, not just on Earth, has been really deeply distorted. Because of that fact, that the masculine needs the feminine, because the feminine is a self-birthing principle of life. I'm not talking about men and women. I'm talking about the principle. But the masculine needs her. He needs to feel her womb essence. He needs to move into life through her, but interdependently, not either independently or codependently, because the true word is interdependence. And that's the only truth about the way in which we access Illumined Union, the wisdom in which two beings can actually, it doesn't matter, right? You think, well, but there's all these levels and I can't get to this level because I still need to experience this karmic and codependent. No, it's just about your own personal conviction. As with anything in life, all you have to do is choose. Recently someone said to me, yeah, but our lives are different. My life is different than yours. And I gave this statement a bit of a thought. And I thought to myself, how is that really true? Because yes, we have different perhaps missions. But in truth, at the core of the matter, all of our lives are the same, because we're all of God. We're serving God. We're devotees of one highest aspect of life, and that God is the spirit of life that moves through all of us. And benevolent, illumined beings, all we wish to do is serve life, bring more of the vitality of life, more of essence of true richness of life, where life has been distorted and depleted. So, of course, I also saw this almost like a training boot camp where the true queen she creates those who would be loyal enough to this path and who would in a way serve her, but not like her as an individual, because she is at that core level created with source, because oftentimes we're presented with the fact that source as life in creation is feminine principle, and the masculine is just that aspect of God that is just pure light. But you need to, out of that exuding that light, you also need to focus that light as becoming life force, to become different potentialities and to co-create with that. So we do need counterbalanced masculine and feminine principles. And you might think, well, this is so archetypal. This is only playing out at the highest level of aspects or higher realms of creation. No, my beloved, it's not necessarily, because let me tell you, I came here specifically with this encoding of an Illumined Union template, and I've had it within me all of my life. That's why relationships were not easy for me. I never self-compromised, and I knew what I'm truly meant to bring and birth into this life. And it's almost like the feminine or the queen within me is awaiting for that return as well. The righteous one, right? The one who knows, the one who adores the feminine, but does not personalize that or personify that. It does not claim that as his own, something to possess or to claim or to even compare himself with, because these both aspects, as in cosmic principles of masculine and feminine divinity, they really have to be interdependent. But that doesn't mean, okay, I'm with you, then I'm without you, and I'm in you, then I'm out of you. They have to flow within each other like a river all the time. You know, it has to be a continuation. But in most of our cases, as you know, in this life, we are choosing rather to discontinuate our energy or entanglement. So we're kind of like, yeah, I'm feeling that, but then I'm no longer feeling it. So there's more of a presence of discontinuation in our modern day-to-day life, the way we see or view relationships. And we're just not able to withhold such a high, it's not a standard, it's just a creation truth. It's not even a myth. And there will be perhaps only a few that in this lifetime, or lifetimes to come, on their path of sovereign illumination, they will understand the meaning and importance of singularity as in each being sovereign and liberated unto themselves. But they will understand that we were not born to just be self-individualized aspects of source. We were always born to co-create, and cosmic union is that which gives life. And Aurea and Aurea, they've created so much already in their ancient existence, because they are primordially ancient. And they've given birth to aspects of themselves and elemental realms and so many things. I don't want to go even into what I was shown. And this last aspect of them right now, this continued, right, in this realm is me, as one tantric twin counterpart of their creation, right, coexisting with the other. But on earth, it's not always easy to find that path, and then let alone to cultivate it and to bring it about into embodiment. So this vision really nicely portrayed that maybe sometimes even in our relationships, there would come someone that maybe we would kind of bring that seed of illumination like into them or closer to them, and it would take time for them to develop within that seed, and we need to give them time. Like recently I just heard the words from my family of light, like we need to allow the masculine to sublimate. And I was thinking, well, what is that? What's that already? Oh, it's a chemical term, right? It's a chemical reaction in which actually it was very interesting how it was portrayed to me, shown to me. It's like you go directly from a solid state into a gaseous state without the liquid intermediary. So perhaps maybe that means that some masculines would that feel they're very stuck, but they're kind of, something is being cultivated within them, even in their suffering, even in their toiling process. It was like a self-chosen process within the soul to move ahead. And for some of them, maybe that's what was chosen. So on the surface, it looks like they're suffering and they're not getting it. They're stuck in the matrix. They're repeating the karmic cycles over and over again. But at a specific other level, their soul is already free because it already received the Illumined template and it received this knowing. It's a feeling. It's just something that always is with them, and it kind of accompanies them. And they don't necessarily know how to put that kind of love into words because it is so deep. And they would say, well, it's just a connection I have with someone. But it's beyond what we call a connection. It's a truth. It's a creation truth of polarized opposites coming into motion, coming into being, and becoming these basically disciples of true illumined love, beloved true love. And that love is always, for me, I always denote true love with sacred sacrificial service. And that service is not like we think, well then, it's boring or it's something heavy, like a heavy task or responsibility. Yes, sometimes it really depends where you are in your growth journey, but it also is beautiful and playful, because the moment that the masculine and feminines fully see each other and within the creation light as principles, not just these beings on earth, they see themselves as these vessel extensions, and they would honor both principles, the higher and the lower. And in that regard, they would know how to channel the higher into the lower, because they would give appreciation to both of these instead of thinking, well, I'm just this now, or I'm just this higher. It's neither. There has to be integration, right, in this processing, in this love-making process. And so in that play, once they surrender to each other, they're also beautifully playful with each other, like these magical children exploring the true meaning of the word, the Garden of Eden, right? So perhaps at some level, at some star-born level, there is an aspect of how the true royal masculines are being trained to serve the true Christed feminine, and that's what Aurea also is, because we know there's many layers and mysteries to this life and creation. And perhaps I was not just witnessing an allegory or an archetypal story, but I was also witnessing a reality that exists on some level. And perhaps some of that which I was envisioning could also relate to, let's say, a person or someone in my life, or maybe someone in your life. But just let's keep each other, ourselves open, and understand that there has to be total and ultimate surrender. So it's like the way you're truly only humbled against God, like before God, not before a human ego. It's kind of that humility, the true meaning of the word humility, which I was already talking about. Once it can be translated into being humble through God, born within you as your essence, has to be your pure, innocent, childlike state. And it, our hearts were corrupted so much, many people's hearts, I'm not saying mine, but many people's hearts were corrupted in the matrix, and they got fearful. And some masculines fear this falling into love because they feel they will lose their self-identity. And that's why maybe some masculines would say, yeah, but my life is different than yours. Because they fear they're going to lose themselves when they're truly blended with someone who is so well aware of themselves as the queen, as the royal feminine principle. But it's not the truth, because the feminine, as we all know the archetype story of the Isis and how she's bringing Osiris back to life through her cultivation using her feminine gift of life-giving. She reassembles him in his parts, literally, right? That which was disassembled becomes once again integrated and complete. So it's again through the feminine birthing canal, the masculine is restored. And it's really the truth in many of examples. But the masculine that is wounded and it's an ego, it's been indoctrinated and imprinted with these societal expectations of what a relationship between a man and a woman should look like, does not understand this. So they have to drop all the expectations of what a relationship or commitment is. And they have to just trust. They have to turn over their life to God first, because everyone who wants to experience this beautiful union as this golden archway into sacred lovemaking or tantric cultivation of life and the sacred lovemaking between the two, they have to first go through the gate of liberation, the doorway of liberation within themselves. Just like that masculine had to be sent away first. And maybe, right, that wounding that is a part of our modern world is that many masculines felt either rejected by the feminines, pushed away, not acknowledged. They're always saying, but you never accept me, you don't accept me and how I am. Maybe if they dropped the wounding, they would see that the feminine only needs to accept herself, and then the masculine's role is only to accept themselves. And in that full acceptance, they will once again be able to drink from the cup of life and have the full glory of God restored within what true union is. But we have to drop all the societal belief systems and expectations and dark projecting and hijacking and, inception about what a relationship should look like, because there's a lot of people who are in codependent relationships and they wouldn't even know. They would say, we're so in love, but then they start their awakening process and it's almost like filters go off and they're shown true distortions. Recently, we went through something with someone and they were seeing how sometimes when you're escaping reality or you're shifting a reality out of fear, or you're seeking to escape something or move in another direction, but you haven't fully been liberated and healed yourself first, you're going to walk from one prison to the other. And it's basically a very subtle prison. It's a more refined version, but it's still a prison. So it's sometimes difficult to notice this. But if we're truly, if we're brave enough, courageous enough to witness what a true liberated state is, like for me, I know, because just today, my beloved, who is my highest cosmic beloved counterpart, Aurea, who says Aurea is his crown jewel, he actually gave us a message. And he told me that at this point, he knows it's very difficult for me because I have so much coming at me all the time. And it's difficult to devote myself to this work of life force cultivation. And I'm still not the full me. But he said, in order for us to move through you as the family and do the work, he said, I need you at your full capacity. I need you as the full Polona Aurea, not just the 50% of you. I need you at your fullest. And when you're at your fullest, we can work through and we can be one and we can be unified. And all it takes, he said, is for you to realize that you're not just the queen in this greater galactic sense, what you are as Aurea, but that you now also can claim to be, and you are fully the queen on earth as well. Because only through that knowing, he said, it's almost like it shakes the earth, it shakes the ground you walk on, and things start happening and manifesting. And, the connections with others that maybe were stalemate or dormant before, they start opening up, only because of that power of the feminine that is the giver of life. And it was years back in 2019 that I actually had that resurgence in home awakening. And I was given the words that where I come from, we're the givers of life. And Aurea is one of the givers of life. And the principle is almost represented as the sacred dove. And the reason why it was difficult for me to get back to that template is because of all the transgression and hijacking, is because this union at the highest illumined level, and when it can move into the 3D aspect and become physical, like humane or human in every single part of the, of the word human, it's like it's the ultimate. I've talked about it in the previous video, right? How that cultivation of union is the ultimate when all levels meet together as one. So it's all up for me now and up to me to do that resurgence, to walk through the gateway of total body life force restoration and reactivation, and that in that exhilarated state I can be just in that essence, because it's not something you do, it's an essence that you know. It's a total truth, it's a total acceptance of the feminine, Christ feminine principle and what she really is, that she simply ultimately at the highest aspect is the giver of life. And that's what I know I am as Aurea, but also as Polona Aurea. So I hope you enjoyed this video and will make some connotations to your own life. And I will leave you with those words. There's a bigger video coming up as well, and I'll be talking about some much deeper things, but I wanted to share this one today. I'm in this beautiful meadow space. It is a difficult day for me because I'm still needing to go through a lot physically, but I wanted to spend some moments with you in sharing of this beautiful vision and, you know, how you can translate it in your own life. For the feminines, the message is be patient for your true king, the one who is not just, you know, we always say you're a knight in shining armor. No, because that's what we see as our savior. We don't want a savior. When you're truly a queen, you need a king, right? It has to be matched. It's like you're fully self. It's not about being self-sufficient, because in a lot of these new age talks, it's like the feminine needs to be independent and money-wise, right? Monetary-wise and all these things. It's not about that. It's about interdependently flowing with your energy. But in that interdependence, as the queen, you're still aware that you do need your king. That doesn't make you any less powerful. It just means that in order for you to sustain life and give birth to life, you do need a masculine vessel to flow this and birth this life through, right? That's why we have the womb and the baton, right? The masculine, we have the cup and the sword. Both principles are needed here for Heros Gamos to occur. And all it takes is two fully free and liberated beings. And if they don't come together when they're fully healed in that aspect, they might help each other to heal in that way. And of course, here the leading role is on the fence of the feminine, to be honest. But, you know, in many of our cases now, because the feminine has done a lot of the wounding and healing at the human level, right? I'm not talking about higher aspects of us that don't need that. But at the human level, it's then the masculine that would follow. So he will return to that sun. And for some instances, it might be almost like a surprise coming back, the return, and you might not expect it. It might take longer for some, but that sublimation process, as they've shown it to me, is in the works. And at the end, remember who has the final word? It is our God Almighty, one God, one ruling principle of life that is all that simply exists. And God is the essence and the bringing of that essence into life. And then us who are here as in creating through our own expressions of life, we're experiencing how that essence is being transformed and what it can become as the aspect of that transfiguration once it really reaches the physical level. And we will witness that at the union level as well. I do much deeper union insights and aspects on my Patreon page. We do a reading each month. But those of you who don't know, I also have courses, and I have a Cosmic Beloved course. There is a whole Beloved section on my webpage you can see. There's also a video I made many years ago when I shared my Beloved, my Cosmic Beloved paintings, and there's a video if you scroll down below. But there's also an audio recording about the avatars of Illumined Union, and that's a very interesting thing that I walk you through, that I share about. So if you're ever interested, that's all on my webpage. And until we meet again next time, I greet you all in the name and the space of love, wisdom, and power. Take care of yourselves and your beautiful body vessels, because remember, the body is the vessel through which the union comes about, and the body is your home. It's our ultimate home. So take care until next time, and I love you all very much, and I will see you when I do, and enjoy. Bye for now.